And welcome back to more political chatter. In this video, we will be talking about my updated 2024 presidential election prediction between Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and some others, but they have no shot at getting any electoral votes. So, it's mid-December, about when, I do an updated election prediction every month. This is my December prediction right here. So, state of the race. Joe Biden has gotten only less popular and has only gone down in polls. It is looking very bad for Joe Biden right now, to say the least. I mean, these polls that, were showing him up by like 10 points in some states back in 2020 are now showing Trump up by 5 in some of these states. So, especially when you consider how much these polls overestimated Joe Biden in 2020. They are not giving his campaign a positive outlook for 2024. As for Donald Trump, again, he has been only increasing in polls. He still has to worry about these legal troubles, kind of, but he is defying these court hearings when it comes to ballot access. He is winning these hearings, and he's only rising in the polls, and he's only rising in the Republican primary. In poll after poll, the only state that really might pose some sort of threat to him is New Hampshire. The New Hampshire primary, especially since the governor, Chris Sununu, is actually endorsing Nikki Haley tonight. She actually has some sort of a shot to win New Hampshire, but besides that, he's dominating really everywhere else in the primary. And when it comes to polls for the general election, I mean, CNN poll had him up by, 10 in Georgia, 5 in Michigan. 10 in Michigan, 5 in Georgia. That's what it was. He's up by like 5 in Pennsylvania. Biden is only leading by 2 in Wisconsin, when in 2020 he was up by 10. Trump is leading by, a poll had him up like 13 in Nevada once. He's up in Arizona. These polls are really showing a big Trump win heading into 2024. As for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., his super PAC yesterday announced that they are pouring $15 million into getting him on the ballot in every single state. But that will be a struggle. I don't think he does get on the ballot, and we will talk about this. My previous prediction had him winning New Hampshire and Maine's second. I mean, he will get on the ballot in both of those states, but it's definitely not looking as good as it was for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. last month. He has decreased in polls by about an average of 4%, I think I saw, across the board. So it's not like he is surging or increasing at all in the polls. He's falling quite a bit, and his struggle right now is getting on the ballot in all of these states. But, he'll get very few votes in the states he's not on the ballot, for obvious reasons, because then the voters would have to write in his name, and no one does that. And then we still have to talk about all of the other contenders. Jill Stein and Cornel West in particular, I made a whole video on them too. Together, they're polling about 6 or 7% of votes, which on its own, in such close American elections, is very significant. More like 5, actually. But that directly comes from Joe Biden, and that could be the tipping point in a few of these states. So starting with safe Democratic states, as we always do, that's California, Hawaii, Washington, D.C., Maryland, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Delaware, Vermont, New York. That's it. Safe Republican states: Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska at large. Nebraska's first. Nebraska's third. Sorry. Not second. Third. Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Indiana, West Virginia. South Carolina becomes safe. That was likely in 2020. And that will be all. So looking and no safe states for Kennedy, obviously. So that puts Donald Trump at 156 electoral votes. Joe Biden at 100. Sorry, not Texas. What am I doing? Anyway, I knew that was off. That puts Joe Biden at 132 electoral votes. Donald Trump at 116. So, very interesting right off the bat because, months and months ago, when I would do these election predictions, after the safe states, the Democrats always have a huge advantage because, look at this. Oregon, Illinois, New Jersey, Connecticut, that's Colorado. That's just 5 states alone that, with the exception of Colorado, were safe in 2020 and should be safe in 2024. But Joe Biden is an extremely weak candidate for the Democrats. And with that, they would have gotten 190 electoral votes compared to 116. So again, minor, not really minor, but significant, but I guess kind of small, minor losses across the board result in huge electoral changes. Not so much those safe to likely states, because they're still solidly in that in the Biden column, but in states where the margin is just so close. Where the margin is so small, it can't even be called by polls. That's Wisconsin, that's Pennsylvania, that's Michigan, Arizona, Georgia, Nevada. So, every single vote comes down. When Jill Stein and Cornel West are polling at 2.5%, they will change the whole election. If Trump wins by a point in Wisconsin and them together get 5%, Biden would have won Wisconsin without it. So these little, I can't stress enough how difficult it would be to predict going into 2024, given all these third-party candidates, because they are changing the race so much. Because, them winning 2% versus 3%, not a lot, but, 1% or 2% in a state, not a lot at all, but it can change the entire outcome with how close some of these states are. So going to likely states, this is a margin of 5 to 15%. Oregon, Colorado, I named some of them already. New Jersey, Connecticut, Illinois, Maine's first. All states, and New Mexico. Besides Colorado and New Mexico, all states that were safe in 2020, as I said, will not be in 2024. But still solidly Democratic. Biden can certainly count on them in 2024. Doesn't need to put much money or campaign in any of these states. Let's see. Sorry. I always forget to plan it out beforehand. And kind of amazingly, that is it for likely states. Yeah, I don't think that there's another likely state. So, the likely states I did call are very Democratic. Not a chance of them going anywhere else. For Donald Trump, his likely states. Number 1, Kansas. Reliably Republican state, but Kennedy does very well. Kennedy pulls a lot of Trump voters because there's a lot of moderate Republicans in Kansas. This goes on in a few states. Kansas, Georgia, Maine second, Alaska is a big one. A few of these states where the Republicans are more moderate than across the nation, or the rest of the nation. So Kennedy definitely pulls a lot of them, reduces to a likely margin. Moving on. So Florida, you all know it's coming. Florida is a state that went to Trump by 1% in 2016, went to him by more than 3% in 2020. There were 3 states, I think that Illinois and something else were the other, and that was less than a point. But Florida was one of 2 or 3 states that actually shifted to the right in 2020. So, compared to 2016. So it is a trending right state, especially when you consider that DeSantis, the governor, won re-election by 20 in his re-election campaign. I know that's very, very different, but they'll show you something about how right Florida is trending. A few years ago, a Republican would have never been able to win Florida by a safe margin by 20 points. I think it was like more than Gavin Newsom. I think Newsom won by like 19, which is absolutely insane. So Florida, definitely likely. He has really captivated the Republican Party down there. You should see him in the primary polls beating the governor, DeSantis. It's insane. So Florida, definitely a likely state. We could see upwards of like an 11 or 12 point win there for Trump. All right, so Iowa, definitely likely. Don't think I need to go over this. Trump has made it so partisan. That is definitely a very strong Trump state. This would be pretty close, honestly, if anyone else was the Republican nominee. But Trump really connects with those rural voters. He's able to win Iowa quite handily. Ohio, I once thought was kind of close, but with Kennedy in the race because Kennedy pulls so much from Trump. But it was an 8-point margin in 2020. I really can't see it getting below a 5-point margin. I mean, if let's say Trump was like running for a third term hypothetically, and he was still in office today, and he was still unpopular, I don't know. But it would be less than a likely margin. But when you consider the fact that Trump, can only gain from 2020 in a state like Ohio, Kennedy doesn't pose that much of a threat here. It's not like Trump can realistically lose Ohio. That's a likely margin win for Trump. And then we have a big one, Texas. Why do I keep clicking it 3 times? Texas goes to Trump. That puts him in the lead. But Texas, he won by 5% in 2020. It was a major shift to the left. And for a moment, it was looking like Biden could win Texas. But that obviously wasn't the case. And whatever. It has been trending left, as you all know. But going into 2024, Biden, again, is such a weak candidate. I can't stress this enough. I am not certain, and I've said this before, and they keep denying it with, like, ballot deadlines or whatever for primaries, but it is not certain that Biden will be the Democratic nominee. Don't ask me what this has to do with Texas in particular, but there was a very strong chance that Newsom ends up as the nominee, maybe Harris, maybe J.B. Pritzker, maybe Gretchen Whitmer. There's a very, very, very strong chance of that happening. But anyway, what I was saying about Texas is that Biden is just such a weak nominee. The Democrats need to pick someone else because Texas, a trending left state, you'd think that, Biden would do better here than in 2020 since it's trending leftward. But that's not the case because he is turning off so many Latino voters, so many voters in general. So again, across the board, the nation will be trending to the right, even though we have Trump as the Republican nominee again. Despite that, Trump will win the state of Texas probably by 8, probably by more than he did in 2020 because Biden, many view his presidency as failed. They want to return to what looks like now to them this prosperous Trump years with fiscal stuff and everything. Let's move on now. Let's see. Okay, Alaska realistically isn't getting below a likely margin. I had it lean for a while because of Kennedy. I still think that Kennedy places second because Alaska and Maine, the 2 states with ranked choice voting, that's definitely in Kennedy's advantage because the Democrats are going to rank Kennedy number 2. The Republicans are going to rank Kennedy number 2 because they're better than Biden and Trump, respectively. And the independents are going to rank Kennedy number 1. And what do you know? There's a lot of independents in Alaska and Maine. So Kennedy has a shot in Alaska. Right now I have it just at 5 points for Trump. I know it sounds crazy, but Nevada, I think, is a likely margin for Trump. I know this is crazy, but looking at where polls are, I mean, Nevada was like toss up. I mean, I will say this: polls in Nevada consistently do favor Republicans, and that's why I'm removing it from likely margin and just pretending, quite frankly, that that never even happened. Moving on. That will be it for likely. I mean, yeah. I'll play it safe, I guess. And move on to lean states. So these states are very close. These are states that will be decided by a 1 to 5% margin. And we'll start with Donald Trump in the state that I was just saying. Nevada, I think, is a lean margin win for Trump. I mean, when you look at where polls are right now, he's leading by like double digits in a state that Biden won by 2.4, Hillary won by 2.4. Definitely not trending to the left when you consider it did not trend to the left at all in 2020 versus 2016. So, yeah, whatever. I mean, as I was saying before, polls do tend to favor Republicans in Nevada, so I don't think he's winning by double digits. I don't think there's any chance he possibly wins by more than 9% in a state like this. I mean, it's not trending 11 points to the right. But I think that Trump flips it. It's a major flip. And whatever. I mean, Biden, again, with his age and everything and his inability to defend his record and just his incompetency, not going to be a good campaigner going into 2024. He will have a very hard time winning swing voters that he won in 2020, like in Nevada. Plus independent voters. Most independents voted for Biden, and I think that a lot of them would switch to Kennedy, thus affecting Biden more. Let's move on now. Continuing with lean states, let's go to the Democrats now. I think that Biden does hang on in Minnesota. It is a pretty Democratic state. Lot more registered Democrats than Republicans. I think that Democrats can count on this one, but they shouldn't assume it's going to go to them. But I do think that it will stay with Democrats because of its margin in 2016. Hillary won Minnesota in 2016. So it's not like this was a Trump state that is a main priority. I think that Biden will be able to hang on to it. Definitely a lot more Democratic voters from Trump's presidency, if that makes sense. In a pretty liberal state like this, among independents, those who are more open to Trump in 2016 than they are now following his presidency and everything. Minnesota is much different than other states. That one's going to go to Joe Biden. Continuing with lean states, let's head over to Virginia. I think that Biden wins here by a lean margin, and this is the first time it's been lean in quite a while, definitely since before the midterms. Even though Democrats tend to do well here recently, even though they do have a Republican governor, that is for certain. But this state, if they were like other states, this could be up for grabs for Trump. But I really don't think it is because so many voters after Trump's presidency, like Minnesota, like what I was saying in Minnesota, a lot of liberal independents here, college educated, just like Minnesota. So many voters disgusted and turned off by Trump and his presidency following his presidency, a lot more than during 2016. So I think that Democrats, again, can count on this one. But yeah, I think they win it by 4 points maybe. Let's see. I guess I would put Maine at large by a lean margin, but that was very interesting. This is like not a three-way race, I guess, but Kennedy does very well here. Probably gets a quarter of the vote. I don't know what that means. It's very difficult with ranked choice voting. Makes predicting a lot more complicated in states with RCV. Let's move on, or let's continue with lean states. Lean Trump states. So North Carolina, I was debating whether or not to put it likely, but when I said let's keep it safe, I mean keeping it by lean margin because that's a safe bet. But North Carolina, Trump won it by a point, I believe. It was less than a point. It was like 0.6% in 2020. And I think that Trump will be able to hang on to it in 2024. I mean, there is no chance that this is going to Biden. People used to, back after the midterms when we were expecting Biden to do really well in 2024, we were saying North Carolina might flip to him. I personally never said that. I always said it was going to go to Trump. But now there is zero chance of that looking at polls and everything. Trump is winning here by a lot. But, I mean, just the fact that it went to Trump in 2020 and the nation is going to trend so much to the right in 2024, there is no shot this is going to Biden. But, I would keep it lean margin. Trump makes it shift to the right a little bit. And but Kennedy probably does pretty well here because they have a very strong independent base. No Labels is really targeting this state right now in case they do run a candidate in 2024. That would change a lot. But that's, topic of another video, which I'm sure I've made. But whatever. Kennedy probably polls evenly from Trump and Biden. Continuing with lean Republican states, I mean, I gotta do it. I think that Georgia flips Republican and lean Republican, not even tilt. This state went to Biden by, 0.2, 0.3%. In 2020, it was such a close margin. And Biden is losing many, many African American voters. What I thought was stunning is that it is virtually a three-way race among, what was it? I think, sorry, not a three-way race. I mean, it is, depending on how you consider it. But Kennedy is doing extraordinary among Latinos. That's one thing. Not an issue in Georgia. But African Americans, Kennedy is doing amazing. He's getting more than a quarter of the vote in the CNN poll that I saw, which is pretty spectacular for an independent. I mean, they are really done with the two-party system. Many African Americans are over the whole voting Democratic thing. They just are. They say that. The party is taking them for granted. A big anti-Biden uprising is happening among African Americans. Many switching to Kennedy. Many switching to Trump. In a poll that I saw among African American men in just the Biden versus Trump matchup, no Kennedy. Trump leads by a point. That is unheard of. So Biden losing so much of his African American support to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Georgia flips to Trump because of that, with a plurality of votes. So that one, I think critical 16 electoral votes flip back to Donald Trump. Moving on. Where to go next? I would put Maine's second, as a lean Republican state. Previously, I have had it for Kennedy because of that ranked choice voting. But, again, Kennedy, not as powerful, and it's not like he has a bunch of momentum right now. So I'm switching it back to Trump. That if there's no momentum now, who knows what it will look like in November. It could be likely even worse than now, instead of rising. So I don't think that Kennedy wins Maine second. He probably places second with ranked choice voting. But Trump won it by a likely margin in 2020. He probably wins it by lean in 2024. Let's move on now to the blue wall. And we have yet another lean state, that being the state of Wisconsin. Critical 10 electoral votes. Now, polls here are saying that Biden will win by 3. Well, in 2020, they said that he would win by 10. That was a 10-point overperformance. He won it by what, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6% or something, I think, in 2020. So that's a 10-point overperformance. So if he's winning by 2 now in these polls, then we could see Trump win by 8. The polls are really spectacular this year. And whatever. Not looking good for Biden. But these blue-collar workers, many, even though they were financially stable during the Trump years, many were still turned off by him. Trump, famous for winning those white blue-collar workers who were unhappy with the system. He won many of them, again, in 2020, but he also lost a lot because of his character. But looking at 2024, Kennedy will win a lot, takes away from Biden and Trump, but more so Joe Biden because many of them switched back to Biden from Trump in 2020. That all makes sense. But also, many are just switching from Biden to Trump. They want to return to that that economic prosperity that they believe we had. They think that they were more financially stable during Trump's presidency, and it will ultimately really hurt Biden here. Also, Jill Stein, famous for throwing the election to Trump in 2016, because with her votes, Hillary would have won definitely Michigan, definitely Pennsylvania, probably Wisconsin as well. So, there's Cornel West and Jill Stein in the race too. So, with that information, do what you want. And then Pennsylvania, Trump wins by a point. I mean, how could you not even give it to him at this point? Same thing with the blue-collar workers here as in Wisconsin. Many blue-collar workers in both of these states in the blue wall. Even though that Biden will not, in the critical suburbs, it's not like he's going to lose a detrimental amount of votes. But in these more rural, more industrial, more blue-collar areas, he's losing a lot of voters to Kennedy because Kennedy is now this drain the swamp candidate that Trump was in 2016 and 2020. But in 2020, again, many were turned off by him just because of his whole presidency and his character. Now they have a candidate, that being Kennedy, but it mainly takes away from Biden. Not a whole lot of hardcore Trump voters switching to Kennedy Jr. So Pennsylvania, I think, stays with Trump. So difficult. I would say that the remaining states are too. But with Pennsylvania, Donald Trump does win this election. So it doesn't even matter. Trump is at 286 electoral votes. Biden is at 221. Kennedy, 0. The rest, 0. Starting with Michigan, I think that Trump flips it back. I mean, what's very important here is the Arab Americans, their campaign against Joe Biden because of his refusal to call for a ceasefire. And there's this huge Arab American campaign against him. Many Arab Americans in Michigan, there's that famous town with majority of Arabs. But, they're going to vote for Cornel West or Jill Stein. Some maybe even Kennedy. And with that 5% or so gone, it changes the entire dynamic. But definitely flips back to, I shouldn't say definitely. But with that, Trump definitely has a huge, huge boost. And I could definitely see, I say definitely way too much. I could certainly see Michigan flipping back to Trump. Again, with the whole blue-collar worker thing, too. A lot of voters turned off by him. Change in rating alert from previous predictions. I have always, I think, had New Hampshire going to the Democrats. I don't think that there was a single time, even, before the midterms and stuff, that I thought that New Hampshire would go to Trump. Maybe there was. I'm not certain on that, but I don't think so. But I think that Trump does flip the state of New Hampshire, which would be an extraordinary flip from 2020 because Biden won it by, I think, 7 or 8. So that would be a major shift to the right. But Kennedy really comes into effect here because Kennedy will do extremely well in New Hampshire. Many independent voters, many anti-establishment, drain the swamp type voters directly coming from 2020 Biden voters. Biden will suffer huge losses in New Hampshire from Kennedy, and ultimately I think that Trump wins it by less than a point. Arizona. I don't know what, but something tells me that Arizona stays, with Biden. This is a state that has trended so much to the left. Very unexpected win from Biden here in 2020, but he did win it in 2020 by less than a point, and it is continuing to trend left. But this state, they voted for a Democratic senator in the midterms, and somehow, even though she ran the worst campaign possible, they elected a Democratic governor. So this is definitely a state that has been very open to voting for Democrats, and many, like Minnesota, Virginia, many Republican here and independent voters turned off by Trump in his presidency, and many younger voters, new voters, will be registering. Not saying that all of them are voting for Biden. That's certainly not the case, but I think that a good amount of them will, and Trump really won't gain that much, and I think that it'll, offset, and Biden will be able to hang on. I also think that Kennedy narrowly pulls more than Trump, or pulls from Trump more than Biden. Then finally we have Nebraska second. It is just one big suburb. With Trump and January 6th and everything, I'll give it to Biden, I guess, but by less than a point. I never know on Nebraska second. I seriously never know. So this is my final December prediction. Donald Trump at 305 electoral votes. You need 270 to win, so he gets 35 more than he needs. He gets reelected as president. Joe Biden comes in second with 233. Kennedy in third with 0. I think that Kennedy right now wins about 13% of the popular vote. Cornel West comes in fourth with about 2. Jill Stein with 1. The rest, who knows? Libertarians get 1. And then the rest go to Biden and Trump, and Biden wins the popular vote by, let's say 1.2%. So thank you all for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed. So make sure to subscribe, and I will see you all later.